Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me, as always, is Mike Tagliere and Kyle Yates. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80, at Mike Tagliere NFL, and at Kyle Y NFL. Boys, how are you today on this Monday afternoon?
I think I'm better than Yates. He said he had a headache. I mean, I'm guessing it's just we've all been watching screens for far too long the last couple of days, but that's okay. I mean, this is the time of the year we waited for, and now more important than ever, we have to pay attention to like snap counts and things like that. So fortunately, we've had a couple hours to actually digest this stuff and then work through it. So I'm looking forward to the show today.
How about you, Yates? Are you up for this? I mean, this is a big one here. This is your first real waiver wire show.
I know.
So you got to bring it 110%.
No pressure. Tags mentioned I had a headache this morning. I think it was because I just got so excited and like overloaded with football after not having it for how many months that my brain decided to shut down for a little bit. But no, I'm good to go. And I don't know about you guys. I started to move on to like week 2 stuff. I was like, all right, here we go. Week 2 matchups. I'm entering in my stuff in my spread. Oh, we have 2 games tonight still. Like that was a nice little just surprise. I completely forgot that we have 2 games tonight.
Yeah, I tried to sleep a little late just so I could make sure on the East Coast over here that I could make it through to the end of the second game. But I'm ready to go. Yeah, it was great to see yesterday, obviously, that it felt normal. Overall to me, we talked about it a little bit last night, Tags, that it felt kind of like the crowd noise. I don't know. Thought they did a good job with it overall. But
I liked it.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Even the booze, when Alvin Kamara.
Crap. My mic is muted on OBS.
No.
Does that matter? He imports it, right? Yeah, he imports it.
Oh,
he doesn't use the audio from that. He ties in the audio. That's why we clap.
Hold on.
Okay.
Am I wrong on that?
Yep, you're right. I had muted it after my live stream and I forgot to unmute it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay.
Sorry
about
that,
then?
guys.
We don't
yeah,
mind?
yeah, we're
Sorry
good.
about Chris. We don't need to clap anymore, do we? We're still good. Okay. All right, so today we're going to be briefly breaking down the Sunday night game, and we're going to talking about our favorite waiver wire pickups. If you want to do it right, though, if you really want to nail your waiver wire, you should be using our waiver assistant. You can get that over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. It identifies the top players to add in your league. You can view the percentage of experts who would add that player to your team in that league. You can get a detailed analysis of the impact on your team. Now, the waiver assistant, just one of the many tools that we've talked about over at My Playbook. The biggest ones, for me anyway, I always talk about it, is the autopilot feature. Yates had really tagged it. If you're busy on Sunday, it's going to optimize your lineup. That is for MVP and Hall of Fame subscribers. Again, this is something where you're busy Sunday morning. You don't even need to set your lineup if you don't want. It will set your optimal lineup for you, or you can set your own lineup and let it swap out inactive players, or you can just get an email notification if your optimal lineup changes before kickoff. If you aren't yet a Hall of Fame subscriber, we've got a special $10 offer for you for 6 months of our Hall of Fame package free. Just go to fantasypros.com/offers for more details on it. All right, guys, game plan for today. As I said, Sunday night football. Then we're going to talk about the notable waiver wire pickups at each position: running back, wide receiver, quarterback, and then tight end. Then we're going to talk about our top 5 waiver wire pickups overall, our top QB and DST streamers for week 2, and then drop or keep, where I'm going to list 10 fringe roster players. You guys are going to tell me whether or not you want to drop them or keep them. But first, right as we were about to record, out came the news that Michael Thomas suffered a high ankle sprain at the end of the game yesterday against the Bucs. So let's start with you, Tags. Let's talk about the impact. We don't know. I mean, Thomas says he's going to try to play through it. He's a tough guy. Impact on Thomas, and then any impact on the rest of the Saints offense.
There's absolutely no way that Michael Thomas, if it is actually a high ankle sprain, there's absolutely no way he plays through it. It just doesn't happen. You could look at players like Saquon Barkley, who he took a couple weeks off last year and came back early, and then we saw it affect his efficiency throughout the rest of the year until that thing healed. So I think players have to learn, they have to go through this and realize, hey, I can't push through this. I need to let it heal. Otherwise, it's going to bother me all season long. And if he does try and play through it, if it's actually a high ankle sprain, I think it's worse for his fantasy outlook than if he were to take, a couple weeks off and actually heal up. This is a team that's built to win in the playoffs. This team can win a Super Bowl if they stay healthy. So I think that the number one priority here should be on the Saints coaching staff to say, hey, Michael, we love you and we appreciate that you want to play through it, but at the same time, we need you healthy for the playoff run. So let's get you right.
All right, Yates, let me ask you. Let's say Thomas does miss a couple of weeks, or even if he plays, I think we can all agree that if he plays, there's just no way he's going to be playing at 100% or anything close to it. So What's the impact here? How do you think the Saints offense revolves? Is Traequan Smith somebody you want to look at? Is my best friend Emmanuel Sanders a guy who you think could go? Is it just going to be more running? I mean, the Saints offense, to be fair, did not really look in sync yesterday. I mean, Breeze, I don't know. So I don't know whether or not it was a decline or just game one. But what do you think the impact is here overall, other than Thomas, on the Saints offense?
Yeah, well, Tags mentioned it. When you have Michael Thomas who says that he's going to play through a high ankle sprain, well, that's a concern because if he does actually play, he's not going to be at 100%, which means that he is not going to be as dominant of a fantasy option. However, you spent a first-round pick on Michael Thomas. So then you're going to play him. Like if he is healthy, then you're kind of in this spot where like you have to play him, which just sucks. So I think that it would be better in my opinion, for him to sit, and then we can fully move forward and say that Emmanuel Sanders is someone who absolutely jumps up. He jumps up into a top 30 wide receiver, in my opinion, just based on volume. Jared Cook will get a little bit of a bump up too. He actually performed pretty well yesterday and got a significant target workload. And then Traequan Smith, though, I just don't think that he's someone that we can consistently rely on. Could he pop off for a big play here or there? Sure. But he's always been someone that you kind of look at in DFS lineups rather than like redraft leagues or deep dynasty leagues. So I'm willing to let someone else roll the dice with Traequan Smith. Emmanuel Sanders is the main beneficiary here, though, if Michael Thomas does sit.
Tags, any differing opinion on that real quick, or do you?
Yeah, Traequan is someone that I definitely think should be owned. It's not to say that you have to drop everything in order to roster him, but if you play in a deeper league, I think that he should be on your roster because this is a guy, he's only had 70 career targets, but on those 70 targets, he's averaged almost 10 yards per target. He scored 10 touchdowns, so a touchdown every 7 targets, which is kind of ridiculous. That's not going to keep up. But Emmanuel Sanders is not at the stage in his career at 33 years old where he's just going to dominate. I said this beforehand, is that if there was an injury to Michael Thomas, I would boost Emmanuel Sanders up into top 30 territory. And some people were like, no, he's going to be top 20 if that happens. I don't know if that's the case. You know, yesterday we saw him see 5 targets, caught 3 balls for, 17 yards, 15 yards? I know he had a touchdown, but that's basically where his production came from. Traequan actually is the upside play here, whereas Emmanuel Sanders should have a higher target floor, obviously. But Traequan is the one I actually think is a higher upside play than Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, just to put a cherry on top of it, as the Emmanuel Sanders guy, to be clear, Adam is a wide receiver 4. And I was the high guy.
No, you had him top 30. Get out of here.
Right, yeah, top 10 actually. If we're in there. No, if Thomas were to miss time, he would move into you guys both said around 30th. That's exactly where I would put him. He's a guy who you can start as a wide receiver 3, but he's not going to be a superstar. All right, let's get into last night's game here. Rams plus a bogus offensive pass interference call 20, Cowboys 17. I know it was bad. Let's start with the Cowboys because I think our discussion of the Rams is going to lead us into our waiver wire discussion. Look, Ezekiel Elliott has the huge game, 127 yards and 2 total scores. Passing game, not great here. Amari Cooper does see 14 targets, hauls in 10 of them for 81 yards. CeeDee Lamb, 6 targets, 5 catches for 59 yards. And Michael Gallup, 5 targets, 3 catches for 50 yards. He obviously had the big catch at the end, which was negated by the pass interference call. Also, we have Blake Darwin, who has now been confirmed, has a torn ACL and is out for the season. So is there any concerns here, Tags, about the passing offense whatsoever? It's a good schedule coming up here with the Falcons, Seattle, Browns, Giants, Cardinals, Washington. So any concerns about the Dallas passing offense?
Not at all. They had some injuries in the offensive line. It was the first game. Obviously, Aaron Donald is a force to be reckoned with, and he could play bowling with 3 offensive linemen. It wasn't a great game. Dak actually played better than I thought people gave him credit for. I think he just took what the defense gave him the entire game, and I just don't think that the Cowboys. I just don't think that the game plan was great. But either way, I'm not worried about it. I think they're going to go into Atlanta and sneak peek at the DFS show. I am going to stack the crap out of that game with the Cowboys and Falcons. Dak Prescott he actually probably could be the QB1 this week against Atlanta. Amari Cooper, obviously healthy, a guy that saw 14 targets against Jalen Ramsey, did fine with him. Yep. And now going into a matchup, by the way, he played 2/3 of his snaps at right wide receiver, which means he's going to face 100%, like when he's there, rookie A.J. Terrell in coverage, a guy that allowed 6 for 6 passing in week 1 for 100 yards and a touchdown. Yeah. Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup should go bananas next week, and Dak Prescott's the one tossing them the ball. I think that all will be forgotten next week when we just realize maybe we just underestimated the Rams defense.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. We joked about their over-under when we were trying to predict it in the beginning, and I was on the over, and Yates in particular, right? You were like,
I thought this was going to be an absolute shootout. Vegas had it at like a 51 over-under. It only hit 37, which is crazy.
Yeah. Now, the Cowboys, again, also, they lost Leighton Vander Esch to a collarbone injury, so their defense is even a little weaker, so they're probably even, you're going to think, need to open it up a little more. Yates, I don't want to ask too much about the Cowboys because I know you're in mourning over Blake Jarwin. Let me ask you about the Rams instead. Let's go with the receivers here. Obviously, we were all high on Robert Woods. 8 targets, 6 catches, 105 yards, plus that 14-yard run that he always chips in right there.
Right.
Cooper Kupp, though, 5 targets, 4 catches, 40 yards. Tyler Higby, 4 targets, 3 catches, 40 yards. I guess the best way to put it, Yates, is has your opinion on anyone in the passing game for the Rams changed at all after week 1?
Nope. This is exactly what I was expecting. I think I may have been a little bit more optimistic on Higby's involvement in the offense, but he was still someone who was a low-end tight end 1 for me. Cooper Kupp, kind of what I expected. 5 to maybe 6, 7 targets. That's kind of what I was expecting. Based on his involvement in the offense. And then that first series when Robert Woods came out and got 3 targets back, all back to back, I was just glowing.
Between that and Calvin Ridley.
Oh, I was glowing. I was
Ridley,
so happy. So, yeah, I think everything just kind of played out as far as the wide receiver. At the running back position, man, this threw us all for a curveball, though.
Yeah, let's get right into that then. I started off, Yates, because this is really the guy, we're obviously going to need to talk about. That's what we're doing, talking about waiver wire. We're going to be talking about the running back position next. So start us off. Obviously, it is Brown who has the giant game, scores the 2 touchdowns. What do you think right now of this running game? And then let's just lead into the running back position. Where is Brown on your waiver wire priority for running back?
Sure, I'll touch on that in a second. We just got breaking news, though, that Jets coach Adam Gase isn't sure when Le'Veon Bell will be back, but said it could be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think in the end, there's almost no doubt. Tags and I said it last night, when you suffer a hamstring injury mid-game. Also, apparently, Gase sent him back out after he said my hamstring hurt.
Oh, my word.
Make sure you heard it a little bit more so I can hold you out.
Yeah. Very Jetsy, by the way. Thank you, everyone, for now getting a peek into the life of what it's like to be a Jets fan. But, I think in the end, we're going to be talking, obviously, today about Frank Gore and Adams and all that. So, but good way to point out breaking news, Yates. Way to take on my role. Go ahead. Anyway, back to Brown.
Back to Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers.
Yeah.
This just did not play out the way that we expected. I wrote in a player note for Malcolm Brown, I was like, he's the 3rd string running back on this depth chart. Even if Darrell Henderson does play, I don't expect him to get significant work. And when you put Brown and Akers on the field, Brown was the superior running back, and it wasn't even close.
Without question.
Malcolm Brown
from the word go, you knew right there he was a much better runner last night.
He looked fantastic. And so even behind this offensive line, which actually looked improved from what we saw last season too. So I just think Malcolm Brown is now the back to own. Until Brown falls apart, gets injured or anything like that, Cam Akers is not going to suddenly take this role away from Brown. So he's now the player that you want in this high-powered offense.
How about you, Tags? Do you agree? Let's go right into the waiver wire. Let's go right into the waiver wire for running back. Is Brown your top choice at running back?
No, he's not. I'm going to say Nahim Hines I would rather have than Malcolm Brown. And I'm saying this because Sean McVay has already told us what he's trying to do with his backfield this year. He said that he wants to model it after Kyle Shanahan's approach. And we continually saw Raheem Mostert be the best running back in that backfield, but we also continually saw Kyle Shanahan mix that up, giving Tevin Coleman touches, giving Matt Breida touches. I think it's very possible that this is a hot and cold backfield that I really just don't want to attack. The Dallas Cowboys front 7 did not play very well last night. Obviously, losing Vander Esch early in the game didn't help, but that front 7 didn't play well. We know this offensive line for the Rams is not particularly good. Tyler Higby had a down week, but he played 90% of the snaps. He's going to be involved more in the passing game when they have matchups where Goff can actually throw the ball because he just sucks against good defenses. But Malcolm Brown, I think that he's the one that people are going to spend the most money on, and I understand it because he had 21 touches. There were just 3 times last year where Todd Gurley had 21 touches, but there were also, I think, 35 or 39 touches to go around among these running backs. That's not going to happen every week. They're not going to run 72 plays. If Cam Akers, so here's my issue with this. Malcolm Brown was on the roster when they drafted Darrell Henderson. They had Todd Gurley on the roster at that point. Malcolm Brown was on the roster when they drafted Cam Akers, and they drafted these guys with high equity, 2nd and 3rd round picks. So clearly they were not completely sold on Malcolm Brown because they could have just went forward with Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, and then just say we're going to draft a running back in the 6th or 7th round. The first draft pick they had in this draft was used on Cam Akers. They're going to look for reasons to get him on the field and say, hey, we were right about this guy. So Brown has the possibility of busting, and that's why a lot of people do fat budgets now, and that's why I'm unwilling to spend a whole lot of money on Malcolm Brown because I think there's a possibility that next week he gets 12 carries, 36 yards, something like that, and then Cam Akers is the one who dives in for a touchdown, and we're like, Now what do we do with this backfield? I think it could be a Kyle Shanahan type backfield, and that's terrible for fantasy. So I'd rather take Nyheim Hines, a guy that so I'm willing to admit I'm wrong. I was wrong on him because I said, they have these two running backs in front of him. He was on the team last year. Why would they go to him? Like, what changed here? I know Phillip Rivers loves to target his running backs, but at the same time, again, Hines was not getting the snaps last year. He was playing like 23 snaps per game. But he was playing ahead of Jonathan Taylor before Marlon Mack got injured. So, guys,
on a 4th and 1 carry. They used Nyheim Hines rather than Jonathan Taylor.
On like the 5-yard line. Yes, I appreciate everyone trying to come to my defense on Twitter saying, oh, there's no way you could have predicted a Mack injury. It was before Mack was even injured he was taking place. So I'm admitting I was wrong on Nyheim Hines. He's going to be used in this offense, and it's very possible that they're going to say, hey, Jonathan Taylor is our Melvin Gordon, and that and then we're having Nyheim Hines basically play that Austin Eckler role, which was extremely valuable. I don't think that we're going to say Nyheim Hines is an RB1 like we did with Austin Eckler last year. There was always regression coming, but a flex at the very least, Nyheim Hines is a guy that you're going to be able to play every single week, and especially knowing that this Indianapolis Colts defense looked like garbage. So, yeah, I mean, I would rather overreact to this in week 1 than underreact because Nyheim Hines, again, he had a role before that Mack injury, and it's only going to be, increased now.
Okay, right. To be clear, Mack is out for the season. We do have confirmation of that by the time, even though everybody pretty much suspected
knows, right.
Okay. I have several thoughts. You talked for a while, but I do want to turn it over to Yates here first. Yates, who is your number 1 running back pickup this week?
It is Malcolm Brown, but then I have Nyheim Hines right behind him. So I get Tags' argument. Yep. I'm fine with either one of them. I think Brown, you can't ignore the fact that he had 18 carries. And like, Tags said 21 total touches. Like, you can't ignore that. And especially when you factor in that Cam Akers averaged 2.8 yards per carry and Malcolm Brown was 4.4. Same offensive line, same system, and Malcolm Brown scored twice. So again, I just think that if it is even a Kyle Shanahan approach, yes, Cam Akers is going to see work. Yes, Darrell Henderson will still see some work if he, as he continues to rehab from his hamstring injury, whatever. But yet, it's a hot hand approach. You go with the guy who is succeeding. And so at that point, Malcolm Brown, yes, I'm not saying that Malcolm Brown is suddenly an RB1 for the season or even an RB2 at that point. But like when we're looking at waiver wire pickups, you want these guys who are getting the work in high-powered offenses. And so I think that Brown is a safe bet. Is there always a possibility down the road? Sure. But yet, Nyheim Hines, I think you have to look at it too and say, are the Indianapolis Colts going to be throwing the ball 46 times every single game? I don't see that either, which is where Hines made the majority of his work. 8 receptions for 45 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's not going to score 2 touchdowns every single week. So that's one thing too that we have to take into effect.
So let me just I have a lot of thoughts on this. Brown is my number 1 running back pickup, and as I'll explain later, my number 1 pickup overall. Hines is 2, but essentially I would, and I'm going to ask you guys for your fab percentage here, because I think, again, that's what a lot of fantasy managers are doing right now. As you mentioned, Tags, we're moving to a fab system overall, and you got to be, some people like to be really aggressive early on, especially because, again, once you get to midseason, a lot of fantasy managers are going to check out because their teams aren't going to be there, so you think you can probably get by with less. I'm a little more judicious early on, unless I see somebody that's really guaranteed going to be a difference maker. I don't see that this week at any position, which we'll talk about. Brown is my number 1. It is worth remembering, though, however, that last year in week 1, Malcolm Brown was also a star of the week 2 waiver wire episode because he also scored 2 touchdowns in the first week last year. It's a little different, obviously, right now. But even if Sean McVay does want to employ the Kyle Shanahan sort of thing, I'm all about Raheem Mostert. If you can separate yourself from the pack, then I do think that there is a role. And because of that potential, I don't really fully expect Malcolm Brown to do that. We know what Malcolm Brown is. They're not envisioning him in this role. But if next week, if Darrell Henderson is still not going to play that much, and if, Malcolm Brown can play his 60% of the snaps, but just look clearly like the superior back, I think he's going to earn more of that role. Hines is definitely someone to add, but I just feel like, honestly, in their first game, the Jaguars were like, we're going to take it easy here with Jonathan Taylor until Mack got injured. So I think that's really, you're not going to see, I don't understand all these goal line carries, that you were necessarily giving to Nyheim Hines. I do think, again, he got 8 targets and Taylor got 6 targets? I mean, Phillip Rivers likes to throw to the running backs. They're going to do that a lot. So I do think Hines is worth an add for sure, right behind Malcolm Brown. 20% max is where I would go on my fab bids for each of them. So I'm fine getting either one, but if I have a preference, it's Brown. Tags, let me ask you, is Brown, first of all, your number 2 running back?
He is my number. He's my number 2. Yeah. But again,
what's your fab percentage on him?
I'm not going to get him because I wouldn't be willing to spend more than maybe 15% on him.
Okay. Yeah. And how about Hines?
Hines, I'm going to go higher. I'm going to say minimum 30%. I honestly, I think some people are going to spend 50. And I can't fault them for it because I've been thinking about this a lot because early in the season, we have this fab budget that we want to hold on to. We're waiting for that injury. But here's the thing. Why don't we go with a zero running back? Why don't we go the zero running back approach in drafts if we're going to do that? Where it's like we're just going to look waiting for injuries to happen. No, if we can project things, and we've already seen it happen with Hines, you're looking for a starter. He's a starter. I really do believe it. Hold on. I need some context for it though, Tags. Mm-hmm. Where do you have him right now in your rest of season half PPR rankings? I moved him up to RB 29, and I could see a ceiling for more. I mean, we could be overrating Jonathan Taylor a little bit. This could be more of like a 55-45 type split. And again, so if you go back to this week, Nyheim Hines had 4 carries inside the 20-yard line. The only players that had more carries than him inside the 20 were Cam Newton, Todd Gurley, Josh Jacobs, Latavius Murray, Christian McCaffrey, Zach Moss, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Peyton Barber. A lot of those guys are very high picks, and it's like I don't want to be left on the outside looking in saying, oh man, I have all this fab and I'm waiting for an injury when I could have had Nyheim Hines, who turned into, let's call him like a Tariq Cohen or James Barber with potential to be an Austin Eckler. James White.
You said James Barber.
You're fine.
Yep.
Did I?
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
Maybe
I was going to let it go because I feel like...
I think it's because Peyton Barber had 10 carries inside the 20-yard line. I'm kind of saying
We'll talk about him in a second. We'll talk about him in a second. But go ahead. So
but no, seriously, think about it this way. You can get Tariq Cohen or James White with the potential for an Austin Eckler for, let's call it 40% of your fab budget. Are you willing to do that?
Probably, I guess. You
guys are going to change this afterwards. I promise you. You're going to go to Hines. I've thought about this.
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is like this. We have been in the situation where you have the main running back in Indianapolis, and you have Nyheim Hines. The thing that has changed is Phillip Rivers. Really, what it is that because Phillip Rivers is going to, obviously he likes to pass those running backs. I don't know whether or not I'm not looking at expecting that. I mean, this is his best game of the season. I mean, it's not saying too much. I don't think, obviously he's got 2 touchdowns. I don't really think he's going to get the carries near the goal line like he was at all. I really think that this is something where it's like, look, it's your first game. It's a game that we expect to win easily. Whoops. We're going to let Hines get involved here and not get the whoops.
And then Cobra Kai happens.
Right. So I think in the end, I really think that this was just their way of kind of being like, let's ease the kid in. And then they were like, all right, well, shoot, now we've got to get him involved. Right. I don't know what Taylor's production would have been without Max. So I can't imagine you've got Jonathan Taylor, you've got Nyheim Hines. Here's the guy I need going forward on a 4th and 1. Here's the guy I need as we get close to the end zone. You know what? I'm turning it over to Hines. So for me, I'm a little, less excited about it there. But let's talk about some other running backs here, because obviously you've got a lot of guys here. So I'm going to throw out some names and I'll turn it to you, Yates. You let me know. First of all, Yates, I guess I didn't ask you, what percentage of your fab budget on Brown or Hines?
Yeah, it all depends on their outlook rest of the season. Like I said, I'm not projecting Malcolm Brown to be an RB1. I'm not projecting Malcolm Brown to even be an RB2 week in and week out. So at that point, are you going to be Malcolm Brown rolls into this player that you can roll out in your flex or as an RB3 week in and week out, and you're hoping that he scores a touchdown, right? So I think at that point, then you can spend 30%, 35% of your fab on him, because at that point you're getting a consistent role player. You don't need to go out and spend 60% of your fab for someone who isn't going to be a weekly RB1, like another player. Let's say Tony Pollard is on your waiver wire for some reason, then something happens to Zeke, right? At that point, spend everything to go get him, right? So. Mm-hmm. And then with Nyheim Hines, I think the best that you can project for him, like Tag said at RB29, I have him around there rest of the season, but I think he's a weekly flex option. So at that point, again, just tempering expectations, I would be around 25% of my fab.
Yeah, again, I'm topping out at 20 for either guy. The one thing I am going to say, and then we will move on because I know we've talked about this a lot, about the Rams, is that I do expect their offense to be better. And there's something that we talked about on the Betting Pros NFL podcast with Matt Peralt, is that the one thing, the benefit to Jared Goff, is that even on the road right now, he's going to be playing with no fans, which means he's going to be able to hear
McVay in his head.
Tell,
yep.
He has McVay in his head. That's not a joke. I mean, he's going to be able to hear him until that 15 seconds are up. And that's why I think he was better at home, because of those sort of things. So I do think that the Rams offense is going to be a little better. Again, there's the chance that Brown, if he looks as good as he did this week, there's a chance that he can take that job and run with it. I don't really expect it, which again, I'm topping out at 20, but because of that potential, I see it as higher than Hines, and that's where I have it. Let's talk about some other guys here. I'll throw this to you, Yates. Okay, you tell me whether or not any of these guys you really want to add, and who's your favorite out of them. You've got Joshua Kelly, Myles Gaskin, Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore, Peyton Barber, or Josh Adams.
So in that order, I have Adrian Peterson, Josh Kelly, and then Peyton Barber, Frank Gore, Myles Gaskin, and Josh Adams down at, I'll just run through my running back waiver priority. Okay, so go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So Adrian Peterson, guys, we have to talk about this. AP looked fantastic, like a dominant runner. Now, this is a messy backfield. I don't even know off the top of my head what the percentage of carries that Kerryon Johnson got. I didn't see him on the field much.
He had like 7, I think.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't much.
Carries, but the snaps were pretty even.
Okay.
Overall,
yeah. So. But, I mean, Peterson got the majority of the work. Swift might now be in the doghouse with that drop in the back of the end zone to win the game. That was so bad. So, I think AP, though, looked fantastic. So, if you are desperate for a running back, I think Adrian Peterson has more of a safe floor week in and week out. Josh Kelly is right behind him, though, in my waiver wire rankings. And, guys, I tried telling everyone about Josh Kelly. I'm so happy that he came out and showed an excellent performance. I loved Kelly coming out of college at UCLA. And I loved his potential role in this offense. He looked great, averaging 5 yards per carry, just goal line work, right? He scored, just looked great. So if you need an upside play, I think his ceiling's capped with Austin Eckler in the backfield. But he has upside, right? And whereas Adrian Peterson, I don't think is going to suddenly become the main guy in this backfield, and he's going to get 20 carries per game or anything like that. But he will be involved. He'll have a safe floor week in and week out. So it all depends on what you want. AP falls just ahead of him in my rankings, though.
And how much are you willing to spend on either guy?
Oh, like 15 to 10%. They're bench players right now.
Okay, so for me, I'm just going to put this out there. I have it Kelly. I actually have Myles Gaskin fourth, and we can talk about that in a second, and then AP fifth.
So stupid.
For me, well,
not you,
mean.
not you.
That's the meanest thing
I'm taking it as you said Dan was stupid. The way you said
of course. There's no other way to take that comment. I said
Not
something
you.
so
The
stupid.
usage of Myles Gaskin. That's the stupid
Fine.
part.
I have Gaskin at number 4. That is so stupid.
It's fair.
So good.
I mean, that's fair. I feel stupid putting it up there, but regardless, let's talk about very quickly for me. Joshua Kelly, again, I haven't seen the update on how bad it is, but Justin Jackson also had a quad injury. So he, not that it really mattered. Joshua Kelly looked great. Okay. Now he only played 24% of the snaps, but he got 12 touches, including clearly the goal line work. So again, whether it's a high-end handcuff or somebody that you can roll out there in good matchups, I have a pretty decent schedule. He's a guy I want to add. As for Gaskin, I don't know what this was, but Jordan Howard was terrible.
So bad.
7 yards on 8 carries. You don't want anybody on this team, to be clear. And that's why, just to be clear, you're going after Malcolm Brown and Nyheim Hines. I think you should have drafted Joshua Kelly, but you should go somewhere for me. I would be willing to go in the 10 to 15% range. Nobody else is worth more than 5% of your budget, in my opinion.
Doesn't this depend, though, on what's happening? Let's say that someone drafted Le'Veon Bell, and he's going to miss a couple weeks, right? And you need a running back to plug in your lineup now. I think that going to Adrian Peterson over Joshua Kelly makes sense for those teams, but if you don't need a starter right now, if this is just a bench stash, I think you go to Joshua Kelly because he's obviously got the higher potential ceiling.
I think that is fair then. If you need somebody to start, that's true. Although, I mean, look, I don't know. I guess it even depends on what you mean, because I am not convinced necessarily that Adrian Peterson is going to be. I'll probably rank him higher in the end when I do it, but I'm not convinced necessarily, especially assuming that Jackson is out, that AP is easy. I mean, Swift, the most egregious drop in the history of running back drops to end that game yesterday. But remember, he had basically missed the last 2 or 3 weeks, essentially, of run-up, and he still led them in snaps. He led that running back in snaps. He's the pass-catching guy. I get AP looked pretty good in this matchup, but he's not a guy who I really want to go against. It is against Green Bay. That's not a terrible matchup, and the Chargers, they're against KC. There's going to be scoring, so I'm not really convinced. Why don't you go, Tags? how would you do? By the way, this just came across. David Njoku placed on injured reserve.
Wow.
With a knee injury. So yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize actually.
I didn't know that he was hurt.
I mean, the IR this year is kind of a joke in terms of the 3-game thing because it's not a season-ending injury. It's just a 3-week thing for him apparently because it's like it might be an MCL sprain or something like that. Yeah. So
bottom line. Go to you, Tags. I'll put it out there. If you're absolutely desperate for a starter, fine, you can add Adrian Peterson. But to me, it's Joshua Kelly. Other than that, it's 5% or less on everybody. Go ahead, Tags.
Yeah, pretty much. I kind of agree with that. It seems like Josh Adams is the running back to probably own in New York. In the second half, Josh Adams
there is no running back. Is his name Jameson Crowder? Does he play for the Jets?
Chris Herndon. Does he count?
No.
They get San Francisco next week, guys.
It's not great. Yeah, Peyton Barber gets Arizona, so I guess he might get a goal line plunge. Like, the dude had 10 carries inside the 20-yard. Like, Carson Wentz stopped turning the ball over. It's gross. Those are guys that you don't really want to roster. But again, I know some people are going to be in trouble if they had Le'Veon Bell and they're relying on him as an RB2, RB3 or whatever, or even Marlon Mack, for example. So, Peyton Barber might be able to fill a role because it seems like he's going to get double-digit carries against Arizona. I mean, it's not great, but it is what it is.
It's absolutely disgusting.
And Myles Gaskin, don't even talk about him.
Yeah. No, let's do it. He is I don't want to talk about Myles Gaskin. Legitimately, this is like ranking. I don't know whether you want to be stepped on, like your toe stepped on, or punched in the face.
One of those like would you rather questions.
Right.
They're both negative
which my
outcomes.
daughter asks me every time we drive. And
exactly.
she also has like the gross would you rather, so it's really disgusting. Anyway, let's go to tags. Let's go to wide receiver here, okay? Because we spent a lot of time on running back.
Yep.
There are some kind of cool options out here, wide receiver tags. Who's your number one off the waiver wire?
Parris Campbell. Parris Campbell, 9 targets in his first game with Phillip Rivers. That's a team, like, as I mentioned, the Jaguars, that defense, obviously, it wasn't good, but so Rivers could have picked a lot of different things. He was only under pressure on 12% of his dropbacks, so it wasn't like he had to get the ball out quickly. He was purposely looking for T.Y. Hilton and or Parris Campbell. Those are the two guys that he clearly likes in this offense. Nahim Hines is going to be involved, but Parris Campbell's a guy they drafted in the second round. He's a bigger, stronger, faster version of T.Y. Hilton, and honestly, I would rather own T.Y. Hilton moving forward, but I think the gap is very, very close. It could be like a Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert type thing where you're looking at these guys and you're saying the gap is closer than people realize, that there's a changing of a guard.
Wow. All right. So this is basically the Kyle Yates preseason ranking show, like awards over here, because Yates was all about Parris Campbell.
No, I was Campbell. He was Pittman.
Yeah, he was.
No, he was both. But you were both. You were both over T.Y. Hilton.
Would you go back on this? Over T.Y., He didn't like T.Y. He hated T.Y.
I did not like T.Y.
No, right. Basically, it was the anti-T.Y. Hilton. To be clear, I still have T.Y. Hilton well ahead of Parris Campbell, but I love Parris Campbell. He is also my top. Out of curiosity, tags, fab percentage. If you're wide receiver needy, what's your fab percentage?
I mean, I'm going to shamelessly plug here. If you were actually to read my weekend waiver wire stash, I put Parris Campbell in there. I said he was 22% owned. I posted on Twitter last week saying, pick him up, put him on the end of your bench, see what happens. You'll find out in week 1. And now, unfortunately, you're trying to spend up, and people are going to pay for him. I think you're going to have to spend at least 25% to get him. I don't think I want to go that high, but if you really do want him on your roster, you're probably going to have to spend that 25%.
I think I'd cap at 20%. And part of I love Campbell. And again, he basically played out of the slot the entire game, which is what you really want to see. But he's somebody who I think there are some wide receiver options this week. It feels like it's something where you should have drafted Campbell. But if you didn't, this is a guy who I think you can go get. But I don't think you have to go crazy because there are some pretty good options. So Yates, is Campbell your number one? If not, who is he? If he is, who's your number 2? No,
Campbell's at 3. But again, these guys are all, I'm fine with any of them, especially, and we have to talk about this too, when we're talking about fab percentages, it all depends on who you have at your roster and how needy or who you have on your roster at the wide receiver position and how needy you are. Let's say that you have Devontae Parker, Mike Evans, and Kenny Golladay as your top 3 wide receivers, right? You walked out of your draft somehow with those 3. You're going to need a wide receiver. So at that point, then you have to spend up. You may have to spend 40% to go get Parris Campbell or Robbie Anderson, who is my number 1, because I was super high on Robbie Anderson and telling people, in the start sit show, the live stream that we did, I said start Robbie Anderson in this matchup. I think you can start him every single week as a flex option because Carolina is going to be playing in these shootout games. The offense is going to have to throw the ball. And Anderson is the number 2 in this offense, So Anderson is my number 1. At number 2, I have Mike Williams. And my whole concern with Mike Williams going into the season wasn't necessarily, this was even before his injury, was how much is Tyrod Taylor going to push the ball deep downfield, right? Because previously what we'd seen with Tyrod was a tendency to keep it towards the line of scrimmage, which is why I really liked Austin Eckler. Keenan Allen, of course, was going to be heavily targeted, but oh my word, he fed Mike Williams deep downfield, and Williams came up with some huge catches. There's one catch that isn't going to register on the stat sheet. He was out of bounds, but the way that he came up with that ball on the sidelines was just jaw-dropping for me. I couldn't believe that he hauled that in. So Tyrod was pushing the ball downfield, and they need Mike Williams in this offense, especially next week when you go up against Kansas City and you're going to have to be throwing the ball a ton. Mike Williams is a great option to plug in as a wide receiver 3 or flex option.
Yeah, Mike Williams had a 43% share of the targeted air yards per next-gen stats. That was 10th among all pass catchers last week. Like, that's usually a very telling stat because guys that are towards the top of that typically are the best producers on the team. You have guys like Henry Ruggs up there, DK Metcalf, Julian Edelman, Adam Thielen, DeAndre Hopkins. Those are the guys that you're seeing on this list. So Mike Williams is legitimate. He was hung up to dry a few times. I thought we talked about this on the recap show last night, Dan, is that I thought he was going to walk out on a stretcher, man. He took some major hits in that game.
Yeah, he did.
But Mike Williams did look good. Tyrod's willing to target him. Yeah, he's number 3 on my list behind Robbie Anderson, but I definitely think Mike Williams should be owned.
So I think there's a top 4 for me that I like. Parris Campbell is my number 1. There's Robbie Anderson. There's Mike Williams. What about Laviska Shenault, guys? I mean, he impressed me, with what he was able to do. And remember, he had number 1 Yates. You tweeted out actually earlier about where he lined up.
He was
all
everywhere.
over the field. They were really
everywhere.
He was everywhere. And remember, he had 5 targets, so you might see that and be like, oh, okay. Minshew threw 20 passes.
Yep.
19 for 20, right? 19 for 20.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All the Gardner Minshew, by the way. But yes, I mean, how do you guys feel about Shenault? Either one.
I have it number 5. I have it number 5. I have no
well.
issue if someone wants to make him number 4. I want to see this offense a little bit more before I anoint him that guy, but it was good. Once you saw that D.D. Westbrook was inactive, it was like, okay, we're getting there, like slowly. Yeah. But again, it's not going to be every week that DJ Chark sees 3 targets. Keelan Cole has been on this team. He has some sort of rapport with Gardner Minshew, so he's going to get targeted. Shenault, I do like him as a stash, as a guy that you could say, hey, maybe it turns into something, but he's not someone you're going to rely on right away, whereas Mike Williams, Robbie Anderson, Parris Campbell, these are guys you could probably punch in your lineup and expect something out of them right away.
Exactly. If Shenault didn't score, you weren't going to be happy that you started him, right? Like
correct.
4 or 3 receptions for 37 yards, and he did score. And then he had a couple of rushes. Like, they utilized him in the Wildcat. They had him moving across the formation in pre-snap motions. They had him as a pure running back. They gave him a carry out of the backfield. Like, this is what he did at Colorado. So I'm not surprised to see him utilized in this way at all. But it's just one of those, like, if he scores, you're going to be happy that you plugged him into your flex. But otherwise, he's just not going to see, 8+ targets. I just don't see that happening.
Tags, you mentioned that Shenault was your number 5. Who's your number 4?
I have Marquez Valdez-Scantling at the possibility that he turns into more than we thought. Aaron Rodgers obviously looked fantastic. He was I don't know. I mean, Lamar Jackson looked really good too, but Aaron Rodgers may have been the best quarterback in the NFL this week. He threw frozen ropes. I mean, and Valdez-Scantling was someone he talked up in training camp, and that's why I was tossing him on the end of a few of my rosters just to say, let's see what happens. It was a good matchup against Minnesota, so I'm not going to go overboard. That's why I have him outside of that must-grab territory. But it's worth a speculative ad. They're going against Detroit this week. It's another good matchup for them. So Valdez-Scantling, I mean, 3rd year. We used to talk about 3rd-year breakouts for wide receivers, and this is his 3rd year in the league. Rodgers talked about him being an MVP at training camp, so maybe it carried into the season. He did have, 6 targets, so it's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Okay, so let's put a number on it here, Tags. Let's say you're not in this situation where you're like, oh my God, I need somebody to start right away. Let me get this on. How much are you spending on these guys from your fab budget?
Those are 5 percenters. They're not
okay,
much.
so you're not going crazy. No. And like Mike Williams. Where's Mike Williams for that? Is he 5% or 2, or is he more?
No, he's more. He'd probably be in the 15% range. Robbie Anderson, probably the same. Parris Campbell. Yeah, I might be willing to go up to 20, but again, he should already have been on your roster.
Correct. Yeah, Campbell's the guy who I think separates himself, if there is one guy who would go up to 20. How about you, Yates? What are you looking to do here for these guys? Are you assuming, again, you're not in the situation where, oh my God, I need somebody to start right away?
Yeah, MVS is a little bit further down because, one, I haven't gotten to watching back through the Green Bay Minnesota game. Everything that I've seen has just been from highlights or watching Red Zone yesterday. So I need to go back and get to the point where I can sit down and watch the film, the coach's film on this one. The thing to keep in mind with MVS's big touchdown is that came against Cameron Dantzler, an undrafted free agent out of Mississippi State who ran a 4.7 at the combine. So this is not like a top tier corner that he absolutely burned and just, it was Rodgers. Rodgers made that throw for him and made that touchdown. He did have another like really bad drop in that game too. So the other side of this with MVS is that he's going up against Detroit next week, and Detroit's like top corners, like all of them are out. Like you saw Desmond Trufant get injured in that game. I think Justin Coleman went out. Like they really do not have anyone to play corner in Detroit next week. So that could work out, but I just don't think that you're going to get to the point with MVS that you feel comfortable next week throwing him into your starting lineup. I think you have to wait another week to be able to see his role in this offense. And if that's the case, I'm not willing to spend more than 10% at the max.
And for what it's worth, Yates, you're probably right on this one. Just because Adams played 70 snaps, Lazard played 68, Valdez-Scantling 42. So he's clearly not in a full-time role. He's coming on in 3 wide receiver sets.
Right. And he did out-target Lazard, but Lazard also found the end zone, which was good to see. All right, let's name just a couple more names here. I'll start with you, Yates. You let me know whether or not any of them you think are even worth adding, and if so, worth any remotely significant fab bid, okay? Russell Gage, Scottie Miller, Nikhil Harry, Danny Amendola, Quintus Cephas, Keelan Cole, Willie Snead, or BC Johnson.
I think Nikhil Harry should be rostered in all leagues now, even though this is a completely different offense than what we've seen in previous seasons. Guys, the Patriots ran the ball over 40 times yesterday, threw the ball 19 times, I think. Cam Newton was like 15 for 19. So you have to temper expectations here with Nikhil Harry that this is a completely different offense. He's not going to see significant number of targets each week, but Cam Newton looked to be like the old version of Cam Newton, and he had a rapport with Nikhil Harry. So I think he should be rostered, but again, I'm not going crazy. 5%, 7%, or in that range to get Nikhil Harry on my bench. Guys, I have been you might not even know this about me. I've been a Keelan Cole truther for like the past 3 seasons and have been like wondering why the heck he has not been in a start. Like I've held on to him in dynasty leagues for like the longest time because I'm like, the breakout is going to happen at some point. And he looked great. I went back and watched his film this morning too. He looked great. He looked involved in this offense. Again, 5 targets, 5 receptions off the top of my head. Like just looked super involved in this offense. So I think that he is worth a bench stash too. He's above Russell Gage for me. When we're talking, Tags and I were both writing this at like the exact same time this morning. If the if the Falcons hold their passing attempts pace over 16 games, they'll throw the ball 46 times, Tags? 864. So of course it's not going to happen, but it can very easily hit over 700. And Russell Gage, all 3 wide receivers, Gage, Ridley, and Jones, all saw 12 targets and 9 receptions yesterday. So Gage,
for over 100 yards.
Yes, for over 100 yards. So Gage is involved in this offense. They need him. I expect his target totals to come down as Hayden Hurst gets acclimated to the offense, potentially not dealing with Jamal Adams as much, right? So it will come down. You have to temper expectations, but as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 on your roster, I think you can start Gage.
Tags, any of these guys worth picking up?
Yeah, I mean, Gage is someone that, you know what it could be? It could be a very Cole Beasley 2019 season. It could be a Adam Humphries 2018 season where he's a guy that you're never like really excited to put in your lineup, but he just gives you a fantasy floor. With that being said, Julio and Calvin should crush this week against the Cowboys perimeter cornerbacks. So I don't know if we're going to, I think we're slowly going to see Hayden Hurst being more and more involved in this offense, and that's going to obviously cut into Gage's production. Scottie Miller is someone that I would definitely like pay attention to because obviously Brady, he's developing chemistry with these wide receivers, and if Miller's the one with the surefire hands, he's going to go to him a lot more often. Outside of them, I mean, I'm not really into Harry. I am worried about the repercussions of his fumble yesterday because he caught the ball near the goal line, went to reach for a touchdown.
I hate that rule.
Yeah. It is Twitter, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
It is what it is, but Bill Belichick doesn't stand for that type of stuff. Right. So it's possible that he sees some sort of punishment for that fumble.
Yeah.
But it's not a pass-first offense. I'm not excited about Nikhil Harry.
Yeah, for me, the only other guy who I'd look at is Gage. And again, it's really since the Sanu, trade, he's been involved. He's going near 8 targets a game basically since then. But I'm not spending anything remotely significant on them, less than 5% for sure. All right, real quickly, guys, because I don't expect that too many people are like, oh, no, I need to find a quarterback now. But let's talk about quarterbacks here. Guys on my list here are Gardner Minshew, Teddy Bridgewater, obviously Trubisky, and Kirk Cousins. Tags, are you willing to, ride with any of these guys?
Yeah, I have them. The order I have them is Cousins, Minshew, Trubisky, and then Bridgewater. Cousins against Indianapolis, ever since that they came there, Matt Eberflus, their defensive coordinator, ever since he came there, they've allowed one running back more than 100 yards on the ground against them, and that was Derrick Henry when he was on his terror last year. So even if Dalvin Cook gets to 100 yards, it's not going to be very much over, so it's not like they're going to run all over this Colts defense. We clearly saw that Gardner Minshew took advantage of that secondary, and I've been saying that they lack cornerbacks, guys, so much that this team. Minshew completed 19 of 20 passes against them yesterday, so I'm going to go ahead and say Cousins should be hyper efficient inside the dome in Indianapolis.
So you're thinking this as purely of a streaming option, though, right? Not in terms of, because you're like Cousins is number one on my list. Do you think Cousins, out of curiosity, is going to have the most long-term value of any of these guys, or is it just for next week?
This is just for next week. I don't think any of these guys are ones that you're going to grab and then start every single week. Trubisky, I feel like you're tempting the hands of fate to start him again because it was bad through three quarters, man. I'm not even going to lie.
So bad.
Yeah.
And I was feeling real good about our joking about start sit over there until the fourth quarter came.
But yeah, Minshew's a guy that I actually think that if you're looking for someone that you're like, I want someone that can play the rest of the year potentially and not waste waiver wire pickups on quarterbacks all the time, I think Minshew's the guy that I would actually grab.
100%. I think, I have Minshew ranked obviously as a QB2. I have him in every two quarterback or super flex league just because that's where I would go. He was cheaper than he should have been. But I do think he's going to produce. And again, don't forget, he adds 20 yards rushing like every time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which he did 19 yards. That's a nice couple of sweet small extra points that you can get. Yates, do you agree? I mean, for me, again, this is something where if I forgot to draft a quarterback or was really late, Minshew's the guy who I would target to go long term.
As of right now, yes. However, again, we're recording this at 3 p.m. on Monday. We have yet to see the Tennessee Titans defense in action. So there is a very good possibility, which is who he plays next week. There is a very good possibility that we look at this Titans unit, which is stacked at corner, has some really good edge presence now with JD and Clowney.
I don't think they're stacked at corner, by the way. Dory Jackson not going to play this week. They lost Logan Ryan.
I didn't know that Dory Jackson was out. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, like losing Logan Ryan this offseason, I don't know if their cornerback unit is strong, but their front seven is definitely the pass rush.
They did add Christian Fulton too in the draft too in the second round, and I was a big Fulton fan. So anyway, but what I'm saying is we just have to see this defense. I agree that Minshew absolutely deserves, he's a low-end QB1 for the time being. As far as considering him for a streaming option next week, I need to see the Tennessee Titans defense in action before I can feel confident in saying, yes, absolutely plug him into your lineup. Trubisky, again, is kind of he's next up for me. It would be Trubisky and then Cousins. But again, I feel super gross saying that. Watching that game, I was saying, pull Trubisky right now because the second down, there was a series right before he fumbled. His mechanics looked terrible all yesterday. We can have a conversation about whose mechanics looked worse, Baker Mayfield's or Mitch Trubisky's. It was real bad. So, but this defense is just not there with the Giants. And again, we can find out that again tonight when the Pittsburgh Steelers face off against him. But that's probably where I'd be leaning right now. Otherwise, I don't know if you really have a solid option at streaming quarterback this week.
All right, let's go to tight end. And again, we're doing waiver wire pickups. I can't imagine that any of these guys is going to be too exciting, given how deep I felt like tight end was in terms of you could play probably with any of the top 20 that you drafted. But you've lost Blake Jarwin, so let's talk about Greg Olsen, O.J. Howard, Logan Thomas, Dalton Schultz, and Jimmy Graham. Tags, are you adding any of them?
I mean, Dalton Schultz is probably the one I would. I mean, this team targeted their tight ends 122 times last year. Blake Jarwin was someone that I bought into. So, I mean, Schultz basically played a half a game last night, and he saw 4 targets. He didn't do much with them, so I really don't want to play him right away. But it's if you're streaming and you're kind of looking to someone to stash on your bench that could turn into somewhat of an every week option, I guess it's Schultz. But I'm not excited about him. Greg Olsen, eventually, Will Dissly's going to work his way back from this Achilles, and he's going to start eating into those snaps. Olsen only, I think, saw 4 targets anyway. O.J. Howard clearly behind Rob Gronkowski, but I mean, should he be? I'm not going to say that. Played 37 snaps where Gronk played 54. Yeah. But Gronk didn't produce. O.J. Howard did. So This is ugly. Logan Thomas is the one who actually stands out as like, okay, well, he got 8 targets, which is something. Yeah. They didn't throw the ball a whole lot in Washington. It was a tough matchup against Philadelphia, but he still posted numbers. He scored a touchdown, and we heard things in camp about Logan Thomas. So knowing that he played a full complement of snaps and stuff like that, he's someone to pay attention to, probably in the same realm as Dalton Schultz, but I am not running to the waiver wire to grab any of these guys like in a hurry. I'm not spending anything to get them.
No, definitely. Yates, you agree?
Complete agreement. All of these guys are touchdown or bust options. And so it's really looking at who has the best opportunity to score. Guys, it might be Jimmy Graham. Like, he was targeted in the red zone frequently. And again, Tags mentioned it when you guys did. I was listening to some of the Sunday recap show. Like, Graham had a couple of bad mistimed jumps. Like, it was really bad. He should have had another 2 or 3 catches in this game. Even though Trubisky, his accuracy struggled, like, Graham should have come down with those catches. They looked his way in the red zone. That's what he was brought into this offense to do. So if you are absolutely desperate, then I think you can roll with Graham. And I wouldn't be looking at Dalton Schultz personally. Just because he's stepping into Jarwin's role doesn't mean that he's going to produce the same way. Schultz had a really bad drop in that game too yesterday. So he's just not someone that has ever stood out to me on tape. So I'm willing to let someone else roll with him. Just like Tags, I'm not really crazy about any of these options though.
I wouldn't be surprised if they brought somebody else in, by the way, just to get in there. But if there is an ad here, and again, you should not be spending anything more than 1% of your budget, honestly, in my opinion, it would probably be Howard for the reasons that you said, Tags. I mean, he did see 6 targets yesterday, and he scored a touchdown. And Gronk looked like a guy who had taken a year off of football, and you know, he didn't look that good. So in the event that Gronkowski gets injured or something like that, or there are more injuries to the receivers, he's a guy who long-term could have value, but not somebody who I'm targeting. All right, so let's do it like this. We've talked about each position real quick. Tags, why don't you break down for me very quickly your top 5 guys on your waiver wire and how much you'd be willing to spend on them from Fab?
I mean, as I mentioned, my number 1 would be Nyheim Hines. I'm willing to spend, I'd say at least, I'd be willing to spend 40%, guys. And if you really want him, if you believe in what I'm saying, I think you should be willing to go up to 50. Malcolm Brown, he's more of like I don't want to spend more than like maybe 20 if you're running back needy, if you have Le'Veon Bell or something like that. Parris Campbell, right around that 20 range. Robbie Anderson, 15. Mike Williams, we'll say 15 as well. I think he belongs in that Robbie Anderson territory. I think that those guys are very close. So it's the only one that I really want to go out of my way to get here is Nyheim Hines if he's available. I mean, Parris Campbell too for wide receivers, but running backs are so incredibly hard to find as someone that can give you an every week start. And I do believe that Nyheim Hines is an every week start.
All right, it's top 5. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go with Robbie Anderson at number 1 again, just because I've been high on him all offseason. So I'm willing to go up to 30%, especially in the event that you have the injuries above on your roster of a Mike Evans, maybe even Michael Thomas now, Devontae Parker, right? Like you need a wide receiver, and Robbie Anderson is on your waiver wire. I'm willing to go up to 30%, maybe even more, depending on that. Mike Williams is second for me at around like 20-25%. Malcolm Brown, same range, 20-25%. Nyheim Hines, 15 to 20%, and then Parris Campbell, 15 to 20% as well.
All right, so we're all in the same range. I have Malcolm Brown as my top choice, Hines is second, Parris Campbell third, but they're all at roughly 20%. If you can get one of them, that's great. I'd be fine with it. And certainly if you're wide receiver needy, you got to put Campbell up to the top. I would take my shot on Brown first, just on the off chance that he does manage to string together a couple of these performances and separate himself from the rest of the pack. Fourth, I have Joshua Kelly, and fifth, I have Robbie Anderson. Again, I like Kelly a lot. I think he needs to be on rosters. He should have been drafted. And again, he offers the combination of the elite upside handcuff with the ability to produce each week. And then Anderson's good. Both those guys are roughly at 15% for me. All right, let's go very quickly to streamers. We talked a lot about it. I don't know if Kirk Cousins is your number 1 streamer next week for QB's tags. Other guys who stuck out to me, maybe Joe Burrow at Cleveland, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo at the Jets. How do you feel?
I believe people are going to drop Tyrod Taylor, and I would grab him to stream him against KC. This team obviously missing cornerbacks. They had one of their other starting cornerbacks break his hand this past week. So we know Casey's going to put some points on the board. So Tyrod Taylor should get back on that stream. I understand he had a terrible week this week, but I'm going to get back there with Tyrod. But Cousins would be my next choice.
How about you, Yates? You agree you like Cousins here?
I would actually go Ryan Tannehill above Kirk Cousins there. I'm fine with Cousins, but I think Ryan Tannehill, he's under 50% rostered in Yahoo leagues right now. I think you can roll with Tannehill against the Jacksonville defense.
How about Tyrod, though? I mean, he's a guy who Tags also likes. I mean, we liked him coming in, obviously. Are you willing to write off this bad performance?
Yeah, completely. Again, looking at he was moving the ball deep downfield, and again in a game where they're going to have to be playing catch up. I'll know more when I get into my actual process for projections and all that. I'll know more, but I like Tyrod Taylor in this matchup too.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to DST here. I got to be honest. It's not a great week. It doesn't look like to me for streaming DSTs. The one that stuck out to me, obviously, and they're almost 50% rostered, are the Titans against Jacksonville. I realize that the Colts didn't do all that much, but I still think they're a good offense to pick on. I don't know whether or not you want to go with either defense in the Arizona-Washington game. I mean, maybe Washington's defense is, obviously they sacked Wentz 8 times and they had 2 interceptions, so maybe they're a defense that you can target. But what do you think, Tex?
I mean, Washington is going to bring pressure, and that's the problem for the Cardinals. But fortunately, hopefully Kyler Murray realizes he can't stand back there and hold the ball and pat the ball 10 times, like Carson Wentz did, continually taking shots down the field. Did you know Carson Wentz got sacked 8 times? It's no coincidence that his average depth of target was like 12 yards yesterday, which was the highest among all quarterbacks. It was the dumbest thing ever against that pass rush. So that was terrible. But I would say that the Bucs are a good team to target. They were flying all over the field against the Saints. That defense looked actually really, really good. And that offensive line there for Carolina is going through some changes. And there's only one team that slowed down Christian McCaffrey last year, and it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think that they would be my streaming option. I do think the Titans are also a good option. I know you pointed them out. But again, we haven't seen them play just yet. But just forecasting, I think Tampa and Tennessee would probably be my 2 favorites.
Yates, anything different here?
Those are the 3 defenses that I circled, guys. It was Washington against this Arizona offensive line. I think they're going to have a field day. And even though I think Arizona can score, right, because the weakness for Washington is their cornerbacks, even though they did pick off the ball a couple times yesterday, DeAndre Hopkins, they can't contain Hopkins. So I expect points to go up, but yet Washington should get sacks with their defensive line. And then Tennessee and Tampa were the other 2 ones that I circled. I'm fine with any of them.
All right, let's finish up with a very quick game of drop or keep. I'm going to list 10 guys. You have to do 0 analysis. You can just say drop or keep. I know, it's tough. Drop or keep, and that's it real quick. We will fly through them. Okay, are you ready? Start with you, Tags. Number 1, Jordan Howard, drop or keep?
Drop.
Yates.
I think you have to drop him.
Okay. I'll probably keep
kills
him
me.
Because I'll keep him because I love Myles Gaskin and Jordan Howard and everything. I just want to roster on. No, I probably would keep him at this point just because I want to see more in a week. If I drafted him, I'm probably not like, I'm totally off. Remember, he was injured a little bit. He did score that touchdown with this monster 7 yards. Okay. To you, Yates, drop or keep? Chris Thompson.
Drop.
Tags.
Drop.
Okay, I'll drop there too. Unfortunately, man, that was 1 week. Big change there with how much James Robinson got. Tags, drop or keep? Christian Kirk.
Keep.
Yates.
Drop it like it's hot.
Ooh, I was a drop before the season started, so I'll say drop.
5 targets. I am going to add analysis. 5 targets, 1 reception, 0 yards. End of analysis.
Yeah.
Drop.
I know, but Hopkins is not going to see 16 targets every game.
You shut your mouth. You can add a little bit of analysis if you feel the need to. Okay, number 4, drop or keep? Yates, Brandon Cooks.
Keep him. Dealing with an injury.
Tags.
Keep.
Keep as well. Tags, drop or keep? Rob Gronkowski.
I guess keep. I don't know. If you have him, that means that there's no tight end on the wire right now that I would feel excited to drop him for, so I'll say keep.
How about you, Yates?
I didn't have him as a top 12 tight end to begin with, so I don't have him anywhere. But again, like Tag said, you don't have any other options, so keep him for now.
Well, considering my 7-year-old drafted him in the 3rd round, I'm going to go with keep there. Yates, drop or keep? Kerryon Johnson.
Drop him.
Tags.
Drop.
Drop is correct. Tags, drop or keep? Mike Gesicki.
I'm throwing my hands up over here. I guess keep. I mean, it's the same thing as Gronk, where it's like you're not excited to pick up anybody, so keep.
Yates.
Keep with Devontae Parker.
And Devontae Parker might not play.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really what makes it a keep. I probably would have kept that anyway. Not a good matchup against Buffalo, but still, yeah. I would keep as well. Back to you, Yates. Drop or keep? The guy who disappointed us all so bad in this first week, Deshawn Jackson.
Keep him.
Tags.
Keep, but I'd probably drop him for any of the top 3 options we talked about today.
Question mark?
Right. Kind of how I felt when I was saying
Burgundy,
that.
Jack. You're Ron Burgundy. All right, tags. Number 9, drop or keep, Leonard Fournette.
Keep.
Yates.
You have to keep him.
Yeah, but you cannot be starting him again. If Ronald Jones manages to perform, to look as good as he did, then he's got that for now. And finally, Yates, drop or keep, Boston Scott.
Keep. He left the game with an injury, if memory serves correctly, so I'm willing to hold on
to
him.
But I think he came back.
He did come back.
He did. It wasn't great, but that whole Philadelphia offense didn't look great.
Not great, Bob. Okay, but you're keeping, right?
I am keeping, yeah.
Tags.
I'd also say keep.
Yeah, you got to keep them, especially with Miles Sanders. Not even a guarantee from a report earlier today to play next week. So, yeah. All right. Well done, boys. Well done. That's it for today. Don't forget to check out our waiver assistant over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook for help with your pickups. Also, go to fantasypros.com/offers for a special $10 offer for 6 months free of our Hall of Fame package. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. We'll talk to you then.
Thank you for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments section below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.